I originally didn't want to make this video. Heck, I didn't make this video a month ago when we got the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, because I wanted to wait and see until we had all the information and then make my judgment. And now that some new information has come to light, I think it's safe to say that the Switch 2 console is overpriced, not just the games. These are the reasons why. Let's get into it. First up, we have sticker shock. Because a lot of people in the lead up to the Switch 2 announcement were expecting a console in the ballpark of $350 to $400. That would have been completely fair. It's a new generation. It'll either cost as much as the OLED or more than the OLED because of all the other upgrades despite going back to an LCD screen. What people were not prepared for was $450. That is 50% more, as a lot of people have pointed out, than the price of the base Switch. So the entry point into the Nintendo ecosystem is going up essentially by 50% with this generation. Now, for a lot of people, that's fine. It's in line with the other current gen consoles, PlayStation, Xbox, especially now that they've just upped their prices. But for a Nintendo console, families, adolescents that were buying a Nintendo Switch before because they couldn't quite muster up the cash, and the Switch still got a lot of the big third-party games and third-party support because it was so damn popular. We have games like Fortnite on here, we have games like The Witcher 3, It Takes Two, Minecraft with exclusive content. Skyrim, of course, was a big one at launch with exclusive Zelda content. We had Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, and the list goes on. So many great ports that while not the best version, a playable version was available on the Switch. So I've put sticker shock down as the first reason because it is going to be a sticker shock when families, grandparents, teenagers, maybe not teenagers because they follow the announcements, but they're gonna walk into the store, see the new Switch, it's $450, and nope out. Next up, we have the T239. Now, this letter and number combo won't be significant to you unless you followed the Switch Pro rumors that were circling around and kind of peaked in 2021 because that was the chip that was supposed to be used in the Switch Pro that would deliver higher frame rates, better performance, fix a lot of the problematic games on the original Switch that weren't quite hitting a reliable 30 FPS. However, in the end it was rumored and pretty much confirmed now, since this is the chip being used in the Switch 2, that the Switch Pro was cancelled and the OLED was released in its place in 2021 with just a more efficient processor and a much nicer screen. But what happened to the T239? Well, it ended up in the Switch 2, which means that Nintendo's pretty much been sitting on this chip for the last 3, almost 4 years. It is very disheartening that they haven't since sprung for a better chip and just stuck with the T239. Now, don't get me wrong, the T239 is a very capable chip. It slides in based on a combination of gameplay footage that we've seen, leaked specs, die shots, around a Steam Deck when handheld, and a PS4 when docked, which is really quite good for a handheld console. However, when Nintendo's asking this much, I feel like they could have done better, considering the Steam Deck is now approaching 2 to 3 years old, and we'll probably get a refreshed Steam Deck in a year or two that will blow the Switch 2 out of the water. And it does make me wonder if the Switch really needs to cost $450 if all they're offering is a 2021 chip that has most certainly gone down in production cost since then. And that brings me nicely to my next topic, inflation versus scale. Now, let's bring the Steam Deck back in for the inflation argument. A lot of people are saying that, well, in 2016... Bless you, Julian.
Did you just sneeze?
Where was I? Oh yeah, inflation. A lot of people are saying that component costs have gone up because of inflation and everything is changing in the tech industry. However, even if we toss $300 for our original Switch into a inflation calculator, that gives us about $400 today. Where does the extra $50 come from? This is made even more questionable, let's say, by the fact that the Steam Deck exists, and it was praised at launch for costing $400 US. And it cost $400 because the Steam Deck was mass produced by Valve, so they were able to get components for cheaper. Taking a look at the Steam Deck's total sales, it's sitting at about 4 million. The Switch 2 pre-order sales are sitting at about 4 million. So Nintendo would have been able to get a much better deal on components for the Nintendo Switch 2, because generally how it goes is the more you buy of a part, the cheaper the part is. Nintendo's order of scale is magnitudes larger than Steam's, so I think it's fair to say that they will definitely be making a profit on the Switch 2. I don't care what anyone tells me, and that is my argument for inflation versus scale. In my mind, scale wins in this case, and Nintendo could definitely be selling the Switch for $400 and still breaking even or making up a couple dollars on each unit, which is totally fine for a console because they make a shitload of money off these things, the games, which are also overpriced. But we're not going to talk about that today. Now, you might have noticed this post-it note right here, the new trade offer. What do I mean by that? Well, I think that the trade offer that Nintendo is proposing with the Switch 2 is fundamentally different to the trade offer that they were proposing with the Nintendo Switch original. The Nintendo Switch was a $300 console in a world where consoles were costing between $400 and $500. Now, this was because the Nintendo Switch original was offering PS3, Xbox 360-ish performance in exchange for portability as well as the cheaper price. So you pay less money, in exchange you get portability and last gen power. Now with the Switch 2, that offer has fundamentally shifted, because now you're paying current gen console prices, at least if you compare the Switch 2 to a digital PS5 that you can get very easily for 400 USD nowadays. You are now paying the same price for last gen power around PS4 level and portability. This is just a worse value in 2025 compared to what the Switch was offering in 2017. This is probably my final straw with the console and why I'm not getting one on launch. Also, battery life. I cannot do 2 hours again for another 7 years. I will wait for the refreshed model with better battery life and an OLED screen. I don't really care about the OLED. I just want better battery life, please. And at the end of the day, that matters. I don't care what you want to tell me. This is a games console that costs money. It is competing with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox and the Steam Deck. Because at the end of the day, a gamer is going to look at the console and they don't care. They just want to play games for the best value, because we are entering a recession, in a recession, depending on who you ask, and people are being more budget conscious. They will learn how to use a PC if it's going to get them the best value. That is how things go. Humans are resourceful. So while pre-orders for the Switch 2 have sold out, I think it will be very interesting to see long-term sales, and if pace maintains a year from now, that will be the true indicator on whether the Switch 2 was overpriced or not. If it keeps selling like hotcakes for the next 10 years, and we get a repeat of the Switch 1, where it is still selling for the same MSRP 8 years later, there is no way, Nintendo, you can't tell me you need to charge $300 for this. It has 100% dropped in production costs, and it's crazy that they are still not dropping it after the Switch 2 launches. Like, if we compare this to the 3DS line, at this stage, with the new one coming out, the Switch 1 could probably be dropped to $200 US, and the Switch Lite to 150, 125 with Mario Kart 8 included, if we're following the old business practices of Nintendo. However, we are not. They're a bit more greedy now and they're charging too much for their console. Those are my reasons. If you agree, if you disagree, let me know down in the comments below. That's all I have to say for today. I will see you in the next one.